Why is the government letting out criminals rather than hearing more cases?
I'm tempted to remind the Shadow Minister about his own government's track record. He ought to know that it was my predecessor, his colleague, the last Lord Chancellor, who agreed the allocation for sitting days with the Lady Chief Justice, and that Concordat agreement was concluded during the election period when the Tories were still conducting business. So perhaps he'd like to explain, when he responds, why the allocation was made for only 106,000 sitting days. What I have done, Mr. Speaker, is increase sitting days by a further 500 and increase Magistrates' Court sentencing powers, which is the equivalent of an additional 2,000 Crown Court sitting days, in order to start cracking down on that backlog.
Meanwhile, criminals are being released and are re-offending already. Will the Justice Secretary commit now to end her dangerous and unnecessary early release scheme?
Mr. Speaker, I do think the Shadow Minister could at least have apologised to the country for being part of a government and a party that ran out of prison places. It was the Tory party that ran the system at boiling hot, over 99% capacity, and I hate to remind him, but it was the Tory party that had their own emergency release scheme operating for months before the last general election, which did not have any exclusions for offences connected to domestic abuse. I'll take no lessons from him, because it is this government that is cleaning up the mess that his party left behind.